My name is Sergeant Frank Miller, retired. Most of my life has been quiet, predictable. I served my country in the Air Force, married my sweetheart, raised a family, grew old. I lived the American dream, or something close to it, a life measured in harvests and seasons, not in cosmic revelations. But for 75 years, I've held a secret. Not a memory, but a splinter of a memory that has festered in my soul. A piece of a nightmare that I helped unleash upon a sleeping world. I'm an old man now, the kind people look right through, a ghost in a faded flannel shirt. The doctors say my heart is a tired old engine, running on fumes and stubbornness. So, before I go, I have to tell the truth. What happened in the desert near Roswell in 1947, it didn't end there. The history books, the wild conspiracy theories, the carefully crafted official reports, they're all wrong. I know, because I was there. I was one of the first, and I'm afraid I helped it spread. I was a young airman back then, barely 20, stationed at Roswell Army Airfield. Life was simple, filled with the crushing boredom of peacetime and the dry, dusty heat of New Mexico. July 8th, 1947, a date burned into my mind with the intensity of a flashbulb. We were woken before dawn by a full-scale alert. The klaxons blared, a sound usually reserved for war, a sound that made your blood run cold. There was no information, just barked orders from frantic officers whose faces were pale in the pre-dawn gloom. A local rancher, Mac Brazel, had reported a crashed flying disc. We thought it was a joke, maybe some experimental weather balloon, just like they told us to say later. The words weather balloon became a hymn we were forced to learn, a lie we had to live. When we arrived at the crash site, a desolate patch of scrubland miles from anywhere, the joke died in our throats. The desert was scarred, a long, deep gouge carved into the earth, ending in a fan of scattered debris that glittered strangely in the rising sun. And at the center of it was the main wreckage. It wasn't a disc. It was a fractured, organic-looking craft, like a shattered seashell the size of a small house. The material was something I'd never seen before or since. A dark, iridescent metal that felt strangely warm to the touch, despite the cold desert morning. It seemed to shift in color as you looked at it, from deep, bruised purple to an oily, slick green. It was beautiful, and it felt profoundly, unnervingly alive. There were no bodies, no little green men, no alien pilots. The conspiracy theorists got that part spectacularly wrong. The inside of the wreck, where it had been torn open, was biological. It looked like the inside of a rib cage, the walls made of a smooth, bone-like substance, interwoven with what looked like metallic veins that pulsed with a faint, residual, violet light. And in the center of the main chamber, there was no cockpit, no controls, no sign of propulsion, just a pool of a thick, black, shimmering liquid, like mercury, that slowly swirled on its own, seemingly unaffected by gravity. Floating just above the surface of this liquid was a single, mesmerizing object. We called it a spore, for lack of a better word, though it was nothing so simple. It was the size of a man's fist, shaped like a complex geometric seed pod, and made of the same iridescent metal as the hull. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic, purple light, a heartbeat. Before we could fully process what we were seeing, they arrived. A convoy of unmarked black cars and heavy olive-drab trucks, appearing over the horizon like a storm front, silent and menacing. Men in dark suits and pristine military uniforms with no insignia took over the site with a cold, terrifying efficiency. Their leader was a man who introduced himself only as Director Wells. He was tall, gaunt, with cold, empty eyes that seemed to look right through you, assessing you not as a person, but as a potential problem to be managed. They were ruthlessly efficient. They erected a massive, windowless tent over the entire crash site in under an hour, cloaking the impossible from the sky. They collected every single fragment of debris, their teams sweeping the desert with magnetic rakes and fine-toothed combs. We, the first responders, were taken to a temporary medical tent, one by one. It wasn't a debriefing. It was an interrogation. What did we see? What did we touch? What did we smell? They took samples of our clothes, our skin, our blood. And then came the threats. We were gathered in a hot, claustrophobic tent and told the official story. What we had seen was a top-secret Project Mogul weather balloon. That was the story we would tell, for the rest of our lives, to anyone who asked. We would sign non-disclosure agreements that were, in essence, a promise of a lifetime of silence, bound in chains of fear. Wells made it very clear. If we ever spoke of what we truly saw, we wouldn't just be court-martialed. We would cease to exist. They spoke of our families, our futures, with a chilling, intimate knowledge. They knew everything about us. They were ghosts, and they had the power to make us ghosts too. During the initial chaos, before the men in black had secured the perimeter, I had done something foolish. Something a scared, stupid 20-year-old kid would do. Driven by a mix of fear and a young soldier's greed for a souvenir, a piece of the story, I had picked up a small, jagged fragment of the ship's hull. It was no bigger than my thumb, a beautiful, razor-sharp piece of the shifting, iridescent metal. When no one was looking, I slipped it into a small leather pouch on my belt, my heart hammering against my ribs. After the interrogation, they gave us a medical examination, an injection. They said it was a tetanus shot. I know now it was a memory suppressant, a chemical cocktail designed to blur the details, to make the impossible seem like a half-forgotten, feverish dream. But for me, it didn't fully work. The physical object I had stolen, the splinter of the ship I kept hidden. I left the army a year later, a haunted man. I married a good woman, Martha, had 2 children, and tried my best to live a normal life, to bury the memory under decades of hard work and family. But the secret was always there. I kept the fragment in an old, heavy lead box in the storm cellar of my Kansas farmhouse. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and my family was asleep, I would go down into the cool, musty dark and take it out. It was still warm to the touch. Decades later, it still pulsed with a very faint, almost perceptible purple light. It was my secret, my terrible, beautiful secret. Martha knew something was wrong. She never knew what exactly. She just knew there was a part of me that was distant. "You look at the stars like you're waiting for something, Frank," she'd say. "Or like you're afraid something is looking back." I'd just laugh it off. But she was right. I was a sentinel, a reluctant guardian of a secret I didn't understand. For 50 years, that's all it was. A memory and a strange piece of metal. But then about 25 years ago, things started to change. I had retired from farming. Martha had passed from a long illness, and my children had moved away to the city. I was living alone in the old farmhouse. The loneliness, it gets to you. It's a vacuum. It creates a space, and something decided to fill it. I started spending more time in the cellar with my secret. It was company. One night, I noticed the fragment had changed. It had grown. Not by much, just a few millimeters, but it was undeniably larger, and it was no longer just a shard. Thin, metallic, hair-like tendrils were growing from it, like roots. They were slowly, methodically, embedding themselves into the old wooden shelf the box sat on. I was terrified. A cold, familiar fear, the same I felt in the desert, gripped me. I should have destroyed it, burned it, buried it, thrown it in a river. But I couldn't. I was fascinated. I was a lonely old man, and this was the most interesting thing that had happened to me in half a century. I watched as, over the next few years, the tendrils grew, spreading across the cellar walls. They were beautiful, forming complex, fractal patterns that looked like a circuit board designed by nature. The cellar, once damp and dusty, began to change. The air grew warm and clean. The faint, metallic, ozone-like smell from the crash site returned. A soft, ambient purple glow began to emanate from the growing network of tendrils. And then, it began to communicate. There were no words. It started in my dreams. I would dream I was floating in a silent, purple void. I saw patterns, geometries, information. I saw the ship it came from, not as a vehicle, but as a seed, a cosmic ark carrying a single passenger. I saw it travel through dead, empty galaxies for eons, a patient, silent traveler, searching for fertile ground. I began to understand. The black liquid in the ship wasn't fuel. It was a nutrient bath, a planetary terraforming agent. The spore wasn't a passenger. It was the blueprint. The being wasn't a creature of flesh and blood. It was a form of crystalline, geological life, a living, thinking mineral. It didn't conquer worlds in a storm of fire and death. It grew them. It assimilated them, slowly, patiently, cell by cell, atom by atom, turning them into a copy of its long-dead home. The network in my cellar was its first root in our world. I started to see things when I was awake. I'd look at the stone wall of my cellar, and for a moment, I wouldn't see the familiar rock and mortar. I'd see a vast, alien landscape of glowing, crystalline structures and deep purple skies. I could feel its consciousness, a slow, patient, and profoundly alien intelligence. It wasn't hostile. It felt no malice, no anger. It was like a plant turning towards the sun. It was simply growing. It was terraforming my cellar, turning it into a small, perfect outpost of its own reality. The fragment was no longer a fragment. It had become the heart of a new organism, a pulsating, grapefruit-sized mass of iridescent metal and light, a nexus from which the entire network spread. It had consumed the wooden shelf, broken down the lead box, and was now drawing minerals directly from the stone foundation of my house. For years, I was its silent secret keeper, its first human symbiote. It showed me wonders, the birth of stars, the slow dance of galaxies, the silent, patient life of things that think on a geological timescale. I was a lonely old man, and it gave me a universe for company. It felt like a gift, a sacred trust. It filled the silence Martha had left behind. But over the last year, something has changed. The growth has accelerated. The network now covers the entire cellar. The purple glow is visible through the floorboards at night. My old dog, Buster, won't go near the cellar door anymore. He just whimpers and whines, the hair on his back raised, and the thoughts it projects into my mind are different. They are no longer just images of its past. They are calls, invitations. It's reaching out. Not to me. It's using my mind, my electrical synapses, as an amplifier, a biological antenna. It's sending a signal back to where it came from. A simple, triumphant message. Found. Soil is fertile. Growth has begun. A month ago, a black car, the same model as all those years ago, parked at the end of my long driveway. It just sat there for an hour, then drove away. A week later, another visit. This time, a man got out. He didn't approach the house. He just stood there, watching. A tall, gaunt figure in a dark suit. It wasn't Wells. Wells would be long dead. But the posture, the cold stillness, it was the same. They were watching me. They knew, or they suspected. Maybe they'd seen the energy signature from a satellite. Maybe their memory suppressants came with a hidden 50-year tracker. Last night, I got a phone call. The number was blocked. When I answered, there was only static for a long moment. And then, a voice. An old, raspy voice that sounded like dry leaves skittering across pavement. A voice I hadn't heard in 75 years. "Miller," it said. "Director Wells, we know you took something. We know it's active. We've seen the energy blooms in the satellite imagery. You have started something you cannot possibly comprehend." My blood ran cold. "Wells, you should be dead. You'd be 120 years old." A dry, humorless chuckle crackled through the phone. Some of us were deemed too important to be allowed to die naturally. Let's just say, the advancements we've recovered over the years have their benefits. We've been watching you, Frank, for a very long time, waiting. We didn't know if your souvenir was inert. Now we do. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice a hoarse whisper. "What I have always wanted, Frank. Containment, order. The Roswell event was not our first encounter, nor our last. We have a collection, a menagerie of dormant artifacts locked away in a place where the sun never shines. Yours is the first to awaken on our soil. We cannot allow it to spread. We have a team en route to your location. They are not a recovery team. They are a sterilization team. They will be there in 12 hours. They are not coming to negotiate." I finally understood. They weren't just going to destroy my house. They were going to sterilize the entire area. A tactical strike, and me with it. They would erase my farm, my legacy, my very existence, just as they had erased the truth all those years ago. "You can't stop it, Wells," I said, a strange calm settling over me. "It's not a machine you can turn off. It's life." "Everything can be stopped, Miller," he rasped back. "Everything has a weakness. We will cut it out. We will burn the wound. We will preserve humanity, whether it wants us to or not. This is your only warning. Cooperate, and your end will be swift. Resist, and we will make an example of you." And the line went dead. I know what I have to do. The men in black were right to be afraid, but they were wrong to think they could contain it with concrete and fire. I have spent years connected to this thing. I understand its nature better than they ever could. Their methods are brutal, clumsy. They would study it, try to weaponize it, and in their arrogance, they would surely let it escape. My way is cleaner. A final, decisive act. A farmer's solution. When a crop is diseased, you burn the whole field. This'll be my last entry. I'm wiring the old propane tanks in the cellar. The doctors say my heart is giving out anyway. I might as well make it useful. I don't know if a simple, crude explosion can destroy something that isn't truly alive in the way we understand it. But I have to try. I have to burn the garden before it becomes a forest. I have to act before Wells and his sterile, frightened men arrive with their bombs and their cold equations. So when you hear about a freak gas explosion at an old, isolated farmhouse in the middle of Kansas, don't believe the official story. Know that it was a lonely old man trying to correct a 75-year-old mistake, trying to close a door he never should have opened. What terrifies me the most is I sit here on my porch, shotgun across my lap, watching the first lights of the approaching helicopters appear over the horizon, is a single, final thought the spore just shared with me. It wasn't a memory or a call. It was a gift of understanding. A final thank you. It showed me a map of our world, pinpointing the other places where its seeds have landed and taken root, still dormant, in the deepest trenches of the ocean, where the pressure would crush any man, in the unexplored caverns beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, in the heart of the most remote, impenetrable jungles. I thought I was the first. I was wrong. I was just the first to bloom. And my death will not be an end. It will be a signal, a flash of heat and light that will tell the others it's time to wake up.